Bună ziua, dragii mei. So today I want to talk about one of my favorite current living French authors, Jean Echenoz. And the book I've chosen is probably one of his most accessible books, Je m'en vais, or I'm off, which was written in 1999 and won him the Prix Goncourt. Two things before we start. I like the idea of the Prix Goncourt. I don't know how much you get for winning it. It's the major literary prize, or one of the major literary prizes in France. And it used to be 40 francs, so you get 4 quid for the Prix Goncourt. But what it did was it inspired people to go out and buy books, and people do buy books in France, unlike the UK. They're a great nation of readers. So compare that with the Booker Prize, where you get a huge wodge of money for writing a successful book in the English language. People probably buy it, but not in the great numbers that France would expect. Jean Echenoz. He's probably my favourite current French author. I've read just about everything he's written, and he plays with ideas and tricks the reader, and converses with the reader throughout his books. It's a cyclical novel. It's very funny. Je m'en vais, I'm off. They're the first words and the last words of the novel, so cyclical. Félix Ferrer is the hero or anti-hero, and he's an art dealer in Paris. And the basic plot is that he's decided to leave his wife, and it charts the course of a year when he's left his wife and he goes to live in a back room at his art gallery, and also stays with various girlfriends we meet throughout the course of the book. He's been put onto a collection of artifacts, Inuit artifacts, so he heads off to the Arctic to collect these and then to sell them, and the proceeds from the 2 cases that he brings back would buy a medium-sized chateau. The interesting thing about Echenoz is that he much of his biog, the blurb that you get at the beginning of a book, is fictional. It's actually also fiction. He was born in Orange, I think he tells us. His father was a psychiatrist, and Echenoz spent a great deal of his youth living in quarters in psychiatric institutions because his father was a psychiatrist, and said he found this unthreatening and rather interesting. He's now, I think he's 72, and lives in Paris. When I was a lecturer, then a teacher, I used to avoid teaching books that I liked, because if my class or my students didn't like the books I was talking about and they meant a lot to me, I would feel somehow diminished or disappointed. So every year I used to teach different books. I never taught the same books twice. In our general studies courses or in our literary courses, if I could avoid it, I would always choose a new book. The luxury of these vlogs is that I can talk about books that I really do like, and all the books I've talked about so far have been books I'm relentlessly enthusiastic about. So, I'm going to read you 1 or 2 extracts from the book to give you a flavour of his style. He's been called, well, it is cinematic. He's been called part of what we call l'école du dérisoire, the derisory school, the school of the derisory. You could put him in the same bracket as Stern or Queneau. He derides various genres, and you can see his books as of fitting into various typographies of literature. But I'll talk about that a bit later. I'll give you a bit more about the book. So Félix Ferrer, art dealer, womanizer, has a pundit who puts him onto these Inuit artifacts called de la haie. He has various encounters with young ladies. One, Brigitte, I remember, on the boat which takes him to the Arctic, is a nurse, a very pneumatic lady. His books typically are difficult to pin down temporarily. You have flashbacks and flash forwards. The authorial voice intervenes. Now, if you'll permit me, now let us speed up. Isn't it about time Ferrer sorted himself out? It's very cinematic, and I think one of his books has actually been turned into a film. There are characters with interesting names. De la haie, Baumgartner, Le Flétan, which means halibut or flounder, comes to a floundering finish. I'll read you one or two extracts. So the authorial voice coming in. Now, if you'll permit me, for a change of scene, to join the man who answers to the name of Baumgartner. Baumgartner deals with Le Flétan, who is his junkie thief he employs to steal the artworks from Ferrer's back room. En place de la porte de Châtillon, Le Flétan double parked by a telephone box. He got out, entered, lifted the receiver. He appeared to be given a laconic reply. Then, bequeathing a few of his molecles to the handset, a gob of earwax blocking the perforation of the earpiece, a drop of saliva in an orifice of the mouthpiece, he hung up and raised an eyebrow. Echenoz shared the publisher Édition de Minuit with Beckett and felt very intimidated by this. But like Beckett, he deals with narrative time in a very ironic fashion. The days thereafter trickled by, for lack of alternative, in the customary order. Let's continue to make progress. Let us speed up. And when he seduces Sonia, the description is: the lovers move through her apartment in a clumsy sideways dance, like two crabs enlaced, towards Sonia's bedroom, where a black bra could be unfastened and drop gently onto the rug in this room, like an outsized pair of sunglasses. So, if that gives you a flavour of his style, it is extremely funny. All of his books are extremely amusing, apart from one. He wrote a rather moving tribute to his editor, Jérôme Landon. Jérôme Landon, who took over the publishing house Édition de Minuit. Echenoz had sent his book to some 19 publishers and it had been rejected. This was his first book, Le Méridien de Greenwich, the Greenwich Meridian, and it was rejected. Jérôme Landon took him on and said he would be able to change his 4L, his Renault 4 car, for which I have a great deal of sympathy because that was also my first car. And he said he'd be able to change his car on the basis of the revenue from this book, Le Méridien de Greenwich. Well, in fact, it only sold 400 copies. But Landon had a commitment to his authors that he would keep publishing them. He didn't want them to go elsewhere. So he took on his second book, Cherokee, which isn't about the Cherokee tribe in North America. It's actually about a jazz record. And wanted to change the title because he felt it wouldn't sell, but Echenoz refused. But so he published it anyway. We can see Echenoz's work, as I said, in various styles or genre. The first two works, Le Méridien de Greenwich and Cherokee, we can see as polar or detective novels, but they play at the idea of being detective novels, and they play with the reader. They fool the reader. Some of his more recent works, you can see Je m'en vais or I'm off alongside Un an, which I find a very moving book about a character, Victoire, who fears that she's killed her boyfriend and leaves Paris for a year. So this cyclical idea of a year, and there is a cyclical element also to Un an. In fact, Victoire takes a car ride with a character in that book, and the character is De la Haye, who is a character in Je m'en vais. So there's an interlinking between the two novels, although they're dealing with very different aspects of life, society. He writes faction. He wrote a series of 3 books, Ravel, Courir and des éclairs. Ravel, obviously about Ravel. Courir, about Emile Zatopek, the runner. And des éclairs, about, I think, Nikolai Tesla, who invented, well, I don't think he invented electricity, but he harnessed electricity. Echenoz is one of his more recent books, is 1914, which is about the First World War, and it is a litany of the inadequacies of the French army in that conflict, and it's now, probably to his mild disappointment, but to his financial benefit, it's on the baccalaureate list in France, so French pupils can read 1914 as part of their French literary studies. Other books, Nous Trois, which is about it's a satirical take on the French space program. Lac, which is a spy thriller. But I would recommend you start with Je m'en vais, Jean Echenoz, and an absolutely extraordinary book, and let's hope he keeps writing. Thank you very much, and I'll see you tomorrow.